Hi, this is Eyvette from My World of Metaphysics, bringing you another law of attraction lesson from the girl next door. Today I want to speak to you about how I manifest my first house. Why I want to speak to you guys about this, because there's so many people out there that's trying to manifest things in their lives, and just by hearing someone else talk about the things they did and how they did it, will motivate other people on continuing their journey and not giving up. Okay, so back in 2001, well, it was basically 2000, I moved out of my apartment. I said, okay, I need my own house. I was living in supposed to be a luxury apartment, and somebody moved next door and had roaches. Look, I'm not saying anything for people out there that do have roaches, but it's just not for me, okay? So at that point, I was like, look, I'm paying all this money for a luxury apartment. You have no control over who's living next door to you. I have to go. At that time, I really wanted a townhouse, but I ended up saying no. I let people talk me out of it like they usually do. Oh, you can't afford that county because it's too much money and the taxes are high. Where am I? 12 years later, in the same town that people told me that I couldn't afford, okay? So never listen to what other people say, you know. So what had happened is I started looking for a house. And my girlfriend's daughter called me up one day and she said, Auntie, I know the perfect house for you, the perfect house. And I said, okay, I'll drive by there and look. It was in a town that wasn't the best town, but she said, you have to come and look at this house. So my mom and I went out and we went to look at the house, and it was in an area a lot of people never heard of. A lot of people had no idea that it was in that town. It was a African American community, a little small area in this town, and it was more upscale. This house was a foreclosure. It needed work, but it was just perfect for me. When I say perfect for me, I was jumping up and down. I was happy. And if you guys know me now, you know what I do. I drive around, go there every couple of days, walk around the yard, make like it's mine. My mom's with me. You know, she's my partner. She's my partner in crime when it comes down to looking at houses and cars and stuff like that. So we driving around, all in the neighborhood, asking people about the house, the neighborhood, and everything. So the bid came up. I put in for the bid, and I didn't win. And it was like everyone was trying to get this house. And I said, oh, wow. But I was like, that's my house, though. That's my house. I said, okay, somebody already won, so let me just move on. That's when I told you guys about the story where I found a house about 15, 20 minutes from there. It was a beautiful house, again, in a very nice neighborhood, but it was on the borderline of a neighborhood that really wasn't that good. So the house was beautiful, though. It had like a small basketball court in the back. It was beautiful. And like I said, the area was beautiful. It's just that it was on the borderline, maybe 2 blocks from an area that wasn't nice at all. But I put in for the bid, and I got the house. It was an estate. Basically, someone passed away, and the people who were selling the house didn't even live in the area. They didn't want the house, so they sold me the house. So I went and purchased all the stuff for it and waiting to go to closing. These people disappeared. When I say disappeared, wouldn't answer my phone calls, wouldn't do anything. They actually fired the realtor without the realtor knowing, hired another realtor, and was trying to get rid of me so that they could sell it to someone else for a higher price. Make the story short, I ended up asking for my money back after these people disappeared for months. And then I took them to court because I bought all this stuff. I lost the case. It was kind of racial. I felt so bad. I was so upset. There's nothing worse than somebody speaking to you like a third-class citizen, and you know you're right. And in fact, the lawyer didn't even have to speak. She did all the speaking for him. You know, I thought it was a open and shut case. It wasn't. I felt really bad, but moving on. So I said, okay. But while I was going through the process of buying that house, the house that I first looked at came available again. And I said to myself, what happened? Like, totally, like, what happened? Foreclosures is a little funny. If you don't have the money in the bank to show that you have the money and extra money from what they're asking, foreclosure is a funny game, and you got to do your reading on it in order to play the game. Remember that video I did? You got to know how to play the game. So I did my research, and I knew exactly why these people were losing. They were winning the bid and then losing the house. So I just sat back, but I was in contract at that time. So my mom was thinking about going to bid for the house. I don't know if she did or she did not, but she was trying to get it too. But she had a house, so it really wasn't a big thing for her, but she really liked the house. So what happened then was, after the deal fell through, I was still going to the house. I mean, you guys know me. My imagination, I have a very vivid imagination. I'm all over the place. I mean, like, I would go to the house, run around, imagine myself being in it, just walking around, touching the door, looking at them, talking to neighbors, almost like the house is mine. This is what I was doing before the other house. And even as I lost the house and was in contract for another house, we were still going to the house because it was back in foreclosure again. And my mom was looking at the house, and we were still running around the same thing. Well, after the house was bid on, I say a total of 6 times. 6 times, no lie. I said, people aren't doing something right. I did my research. Now the deal that I was in fell through. The people ripped me off, but it fell through. So now I said, well, I'm gonna bid on this house again. Still running around, smiling. My mom in the yard, messing around, trying to peek in the windows, but most of them all boarded up. The whole 9 we were doing. So it came time for the bidding. I bid. I made a larger bid. Someone beat me. One person beat me to the bid. One person beat me. I said, this house is mine. I said, this house already been bid on 6 times. This house is mine. I put in an affirmation. And I imagined that the house was mine. The feeling of the joy from me running around the house, from me being with my mom, having such a good time, praying on the house, walking around, touching the windows, trying to peek in, enjoying myself, saying this house is mine, talking to the neighbors. I said, this house is mine. What I did, the people bid on the house, they won. I then wrote a letter to the main foreclosure company. I think it was in Maryland or Washington. I said, this house was bid on 6 times. And I said, each time, now I knew I was second in line. I said, each time this house is bid on, and the person that wins the bid obviously do not have the money, why isn't it going to the next person in line? Why is the house being bid on all over again? This is the 7th time that this house has been bid on, and wasting people time. This house, if the person who bid on this house that won do not have the money to get this house, it should go to the next person. You know who the next person was, right? It was me. So, all of a sudden, I get a call from the realtor. He says, Eyvette, what the heck did you do? I said, what? You got the house. I said, what? I said, yay! I jumped up. My mom jumped up. I said, okay, Mom. Now, I gotta play the game. The same way they lost this house, it can happen to me if I don't play this game right. We combined both our bank accounts. The foreclosure, I'm not gonna go into that, but the foreclosure is if they're asking $150,000 for a house and you bid $250, not only do you need 3% of that $150 and the closing fees, now you got to show $150 to $250. You have to show that difference in the bank. And that was the secret that nobody was figuring out. So if you bid $250 on that house, okay, let's say $185 and they were saying $125, you have to show $60,000 in the bank. On top of that, you got to show 3% of the $125 they were asking for and the closing fees. So you have 2 days to show that money in the bank. I combined, my name is on my mother's accounts, my mom, and her name is on mine. We combined both bank accounts, and I was able to show that I had the money, even though I didn't. And that's what happened. I jumped up and down. Within a month and a half, I had my house. Now, let me just explain this to you guys. I took action. On top of the action, and it wasn't nothing big. I just wrote a letter because the house was mine. On top of that, the joy that I had going back to the house every couple of days, the house, without me even knowing, even while I was in another contract, I had no idea that the house was already mine. God works in mysterious ways. When the universe, when you put it out there that you want something and God gives it to you, it's like God will make a way for that to come back to you. Now, that house was bid on 7 times. I did not win the foreclosure bid. I did not win. I'm telling you now, I did not win. But it ended up being mine just by me taking action. On top of that, the joy that I had by going to that house, running around, jumping up and down with my mom, talking to the neighbors, it was like I was claiming that house to be mine. There was no doubt. And then when I lost, I said, okay, I'll move on. But I kept going back to the house, not only for myself, but for my mom this time. We were going, I don't know, I don't think she bid. I don't think she bid, but she was supposed to be bidding on that house. And we were going back to that house, even though I was in contract for another house. So I said, I'll have my house and she'll have hers. But at the end of the day, I ended up getting that house. Just like that. It was mainly part of my vivid imagination. My imagination has always been wild. It's always been wild. And I really believe that's part of the reason why I manifest a lot of things. I'm telling you right now, you see a child and how their imagination is so wild and crazy? That's the secret, you guys. Everything starts with your imagination. Name one thing, please, name one thing that wasn't created from imagination, from your imagination. The clothes you wear, the garbage can, the chair I'm sitting in, this Buddha statue sitting here. Name one thing that wasn't created by somebody's imagination. In fact, the whole world, the universe was created by God by speaking the word. But God first thought of it and then spoke the word. It all starts with thought. And that's the secret to everything. And just being in joy and having happiness is what gets you there. It's your imagination and your feelings that get you there. My imagination was, this house was mine. I claimed that house. I ran around it. I talked to the neighbors. I drove to the house so many times and had no idea that that house was already mine. To today, I can tell you, I don't know how I got that house. I stayed in it for 12 years until it was time for me to move on. But I got it. And I got it in a way that only God can answer how. Again, this is Eyvette from My World of Metaphysics, bringing you another law of attraction lesson, How I Manifest My First House. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe, and namaste.